Hey, South Hills Church. Today, I have a special occasion for you. I want to just give you a little background of who we are as a church and the decisions that are made at the church, how they are overseen by someone else besides me. At our organization, South Hills Church, we have a board overseeing all of our decisions so that we can remain in line with listening to God's voice, and so that you, as a congregation, know that there is responsibility and accountability, not only on the senior pastor, but on the campus pastors as well. So today, I'm going to be introducing to you who our South Hills board is and their heart behind serving God and serving the local church. So guys, we're going to take a moment right now, and I want you guys to introduce yourself to our church. Let them know who you are, give them your name, the campus you attend to, and I also want you to take a moment and answer the question of why you serve on our board and even at the local campus. For those of you who don't know, Chris and his wife Laura are the founding pastors of South Hills Church, and today we are the church who we are because of the heart of the founding pastors. So Chris, say hello to your church that you started 25 years ago, but also introduce yourself to those who don't know who you are.
Yeah, my name is Chris Ellingson, and as Moses was talking about, we are the founding pastors of South Hills Church. Started in March 29th, 1998, and about a year and a half ago, felt like God was calling us to a different season, and no doubt in my mind that Moses was the guy to take it over. So right now, I'm helping to expand South Hills in other states, but also serving on the board.
My name is Tom Fredrickson, and I attend South Hills Corona campus. I wanted to volunteer my time and share the expertise that I learned in churches run as a business, and sometimes it takes business people to help make the decisions to make sure that we're going in the right direction.
I'm Roger Batchelder. I attend the South Hills Manhattan Beach campus. What I'm enjoying about being on the board is just, having visibility into the direction of the church and being able to weigh in, utilizing, my experience of been in church for years and also just my experience in business.
Hi, I'm Blair Minnis. I attend South Hills Costa Mesa, and I enjoy seeing the inner workings of South Hills Church. It gives me an idea of the direction the church is heading. I also get to have some input in the direction the church is heading. And it's very important, like a family. South Hills is my family.
One of the aspects that gives me a lot of fulfillment is the camaraderie that we get with other volunteers and the friendships that we create within that. We are here to support not only the congregation as a whole, but the people that run it. That's the staff, and especially our senior pastor, Moses.
I love serving on the board. It's a new role for me. I've always been on the board, but not in that seat. It has more of a serving role, which I enjoy because it is the way God's designed us. We're designed to serve.
Or really because it's good for us. It's good for us in that we grow closer to the Lord.
There is more joy that is brought by serving, by helping other individuals within the church, by bringing people from outside of the church into the church.
The mission of this church is to bring people to Christ, and that's near and dear to my heart.
Guys, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to coming out and allowing the church to get to know you, to hear your heart. I wanted them to know who our South Hills board is so that they can feel comfort and security knowing that not just the pastors are making decisions of the church, but there is accountability from an aerial view of who we are as a church and that we're going in the right direction. South Hills, I hope you enjoyed today getting to know who our South Hills board is.
Okay, we're going to continue our series that we started last week. Have you guys ever done this where when you're a kid in the playground, you acted like you knew what they were talking about when you really had no idea what they were talking about? I remember the earliest version of this was, where do babies come from? It's like, everybody knows where babies come from, right? And I was like a little kid, and I'm like, yeah, I had no idea. And then you go home and you ask your parents that all too uncomfortable question, where do babies come from? And then you get the answer. That's right, stork. But like there's these questions where you're like, man, I want to act like I know because I want to seem like I'm cool, but then I don't really know. What this happened to me when I first started in ministry. I went to private schools my whole life, but there was still a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And when I get to working in ministry, I've got these guys, and they were in Bible schools and Bible colleges, and they grew up with this stuff, and they were debating Spurgeon and Bonhoeffer, and they were just talking about the Calvinist sect, and they were just telling all these things. And they were like, "You right, James?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have no idea what you guys are talking about." Well, they were doing that. I was like doing, keg stands in my fraternity house. So I'm like, I don't know what you guys are really talking about, but I'll pretend like I do. And the thing of it is, I wanted them to think that I knew. Why? Guys, in our culture today, I know we hear a lot of nice sayings like learners are leaders and we're all learners and we should all learn together. But the truth is that we don't really value learners. We value knowers. That's what we want. We want you to know what you're talking about. We don't want to just think, oh, you're learning this or you're just getting this. We value knowers. We want to know you have the answers. And that's certainly the case for pastors as well. By the way, if you ever want to trip up your pastor, if you're watching this online and you maybe go to another church and you want to kind of trip them up and kind of do something like that, go to your pastor and go, you know what gets me through the day? You know what I really love? Habakkuk 2:4. Don't you? And see what they do, okay? Because if you go there and if you go, oh man, I just love Habakkuk 2:4, right, pastor? And the pastor goes, yeah, I love it too. He's lying, okay? Because nobody really knows off the top of their head Habakkuk 2. Does anybody here know Habakkuk 2:4? I didn't think so. Thank you for being honest. It's a very good verse. It's, see, the enemy is puffed up. His desires are not upright, but the righteous person will live by his faithfulness. Great verse. But they probably really don't know it, but they want to act like they do. So they'll probably go, oh yeah, it's a good one. It's a real good one. Because they want you to think that they know all. I don't even think Habakkuk has read all of Habakkuk yet, right? So it's one of those obscure verses, but we want to act like we've got all the answers. Now, here's the deal. If you look at me, you're thinking one thing. A rugged, mountain, manly man. Right. So when you look at me, you're like, man, that guy is rugged. That guy is a man's man. That is a rugged dude. And I don't want to really, ask help if my toilet backs up or my garbage disposal backs up. I don't want to ask for help. I'm a manly dude. I want to know how to do that on my own. I don't want to ask for help, right? And then I finally have to break down and have, Melanie do it. And it's not always together fun. So, remember, if that's someone you know, understand this. Here's where it gets really sticky. When Christians feel like you can't question anything about their faith. It's as if you're supposed to just believe 100% of it and you can't question it and you can't talk about any of that stuff because you're not a very good Christian if you don't. If that's you or someone you know this. Our deepest questions don't disappear. We just feel like it's unsafe to ask them. If you've got questions about the Bible or about God, or is Jesus really the Son of God? Does he really die and come back to life? I mean, did God really create the world in 7 days? Is all these things, can that really be possible? And you have questions about this, and you're like, well, I can't ask that because then it's going to make me seem like my faith isn't strong. Those questions are still going to be there. You're still going to have those questions. You're just pretending and acting like you don't, but you will. And the thing of it is, when we get this is a problem when we actually think you can't question anything. You've just got to take everything at face value. The Bible's 100% right, which I believe it is, but I don't understand it, or I may want to think I understand it all, but maybe you don't. And maybe you have to let yourself understand that you have to ask some questions. Some of these things are philosophical, but some of them are situational. Okay, let me explain this. It's kind of like this. Maybe you're going through a very difficult time in your life right now, and that doesn't match what you think God should be, but you're too scared to ask a question about it. You might be going, I don't know why I'm going through this. This is so unfair. It's not at all. I tithe, I go to church, I serve, I trust God, I love God, but I'm going through this really dark space and I don't know why, and it doesn't match my expectations of God in the scriptures that I understand. But can you ask a question about it? No, I can't. I can't ask a question because it's going to seem like I don't trust God. It's going to seem like I don't have a very good faith. And then there's people where you really can't ask a question. I've seen people like literally stop talking to people because they had questions. It's like, you know what, we can't be friends anymore because, this one person, it's this true story. They love this person posted on social media, I love Jesus, but I have a hard time believing God create the world in 7 days. It's a question. And the person said, I just defriended them. They're no longer my friend anymore. I'm not talking to them anymore. And I'm like, why? Well, because that person doesn't believe in God. Because they had a question about it? Yeah. So they suddenly think like if you question anything, your faith isn't very strong. Listen, we tell people what to think instead of teaching them how to think, guys. And that's the problem for a lot of us. We tell them what you're supposed to think, this is it and that's that. Just take it at face value, but we don't tell them how to think, okay? And we actually, this can get us in a lot of problems, guys. Now, we're seeing this right now online. Right now online, if you were to post something, have you seen an online witch hunt where somebody posts something and man, people just jump on them and tear them apart limb from limb? I've seen it, it's ugly. They post something and the second somebody doesn't agree with it, man, they're like ripping them apart, whatever side of the fence you're on. And it's ugly. It gets really, really, really ugly. It's not good. And so we have these like online witch hunts and people go, well, I'm not gonna talk to that person anymore because I don't like what they posted. Or, I'm gonna defriend you as if that's somehow a punishment of some kind. For some people, they're like, I'm gonna defriend you. Thank you, good. I don't have to see your nonsense anymore. Okay, so imagine this for a second, okay? We have these online witch hunts, but think about this for a second. In this country, we actually had real legitimate witch hunts. In other words, we had this thing where if you don't fall in line, you're out in our religious line. I mean, there was people that were persecuted. 80,000 people were tried as witches, okay? 80,000. And 40,000 of them were executed because they didn't fall in line. Because the religious elite at the time said, this is what it's supposed to look, and if you don't look, it doesn't look like this, you're obviously a witch, you're a terrible person. It was very barbaric. The idea was fall in line or else, just because they didn't think differently. Now listen, Jesus never tortured, killed, or ruined the life of anyone, including those who disagreed with him. The sad part is, the same can't be said about the church that's supposed to be representing him. And we've had a really tricky history with this, guys. We've got to be honest about that. Now, when we look at the life of Jesus, he entertained a lot of different debates. People asked him a lot of questions. He was never worried about it. Why? Because he knows exactly who he is. He's not worried about that. He knows who he is. Now, when thinking of studying the Bible, we immediately think of Bible schools or seminaries or Bible colleges, and that's what we think about of really understanding God's word. But when you look at the way Jesus taught, they called him rabbi. His disciples called him rabbi. That means teacher. And he called them disciples, which means students. And he allowed them to ask questions. He allowed them to try to poke holes in this stuff. And let's go there. Let's talk about this. Let's wrestle with some of this. Okay? In fact, the name Israel actually means one who wrestles with God. So this is something that Jesus is absolutely, completely used to. Okay? It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to have doubts even. Guys, remember this. There is no discipleship without debate. Okay? The way you learn is you start to ask questions. I don't understand. That doesn't make sense to me. Why is it this way? And by the way, just a little side note, if you don't know the answer, don't say anything. Okay? Because you can do a lot more damage by just guessing and trying to act like you're some sort of a bigger, better Christian. Now, guys, I want to give you permission to ask questions about your faith. I'm even going to go as far as to say, go ahead and ask questions if Jesus really is who he says he is. Ask those questions. Because the people that were closest to him actually did. John the Baptist actually asks, are you really the one? This is his cousin. This is what it says here in Matthew 11. When John, who was in prison, heard about the deeds of the Messiah, he sent his disciples to ask him, are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else? Now listen to me. This is John. Okay, now at this point, John's in serious trouble. John is not shy from trouble. He's got a pretty vocal attitude. He's very brash and bold. He's out there, dude. And he's in serious trouble at this point. He's ticked off the elite in the area. He's ticked off the Romans. He knows he doesn't have very much time left. He knows, okay, I think I went too far on this one. So he sends his disciples over. I want to make sure before I die, because I know they're going to kill me in here, are you really the one you say you are? Remember this, guys. This is the same John that saw Jesus do miracles. This is the same John that's his cousin. This is the same John that baptized him. And before he goes, he says, I'm going to make time out. Are you really the one, or is there someone else coming? If John isn't asked those questions, don't you think there's room for you and I do as well? It's okay to ask those questions. In fact, you should. Maybe a lot of us grew up in this attitude or this home, and I know I've received some of this too, but maybe you've had. When you asked your parents a question, did anybody ever get an answer because I said so? You ever get one of those? Why do I have to do that? Yes, right. Why do I have to do this? Because I said so. Well, how come? Because I said so, right? Well, Jesus doesn't necessarily do this at all. In fact, this is what happens. Matthew 11:4 says, Jesus replied, go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Okay? He doesn't say because I said so. He doesn't say, John, are you kidding? We grew up together. You baptized me for goodness sakes, and you're questioning me? He doesn't do that at all. He doesn't do that at all. He actually says, it's okay, but I'm not going to answer you. I'm going to show you by my actions here what it is. Jesus doesn't take issue with that. Why? Because an active, authentic faith asks questions, acknowledges fears, and wrestles with doubt. If you really want a real relationship, it's going to get ugly sometimes. You're going to have to go there sometimes. You're going to have to ask some tough questions sometimes. It's not just all roses and skips in the park, right? You're going to have to, hey, I want to know for sure, what is this all about? Okay? Now, those are the environments that Jesus gave for all the people that followed him, okay? It's in those environments that actually let us breathe and let us ask those questions. Remember this, Jesus is a safe place to bring our deepest questions, concerns, and doubts. He's safe. Okay? If you got a question, if you're doubting, I don't know why I'm going through this. I don't know why I can't get this job. I don't know why I can't find love. I don't know why this illness is still there. I don't know why. Go ahead and ask. But don't do this. Well, everything works for the glory of God, so just don't do that. Okay? Because that person, I'm telling you now, I've counseled for long enough, they don't want to hear that at that moment. They want to hear, I'm sorry. Let's go, let's talk. What do you need? And if you don't have the answer, don't give an answer, okay? It's okay to have those doubts and concerns. Jesus knows that. He says, go ahead, ask me, come to me, let's get real. Now, also, if we're supposed to become like Christ, we ought to be the safest place for other people to bring their deepest questions, concerns, and doubts to, okay? So if we're Jesus' followers, we should allow people to come and ask us those questions as well. In fact, that's healthy. That's good. Okay? We're not called to be experts. The issue with this is a lot of people, especially my fellow Christian brothers, don't want to be learners. They want to be teachers. They want to seem like they have all the answers. They want to seem like if you have questions and you're somehow not as good as I am, so let me explain to you. As if God needs an attorney, that he has to have us defend him to somebody and say, well, you have questions and you obviously are struggling with your faith. Let's all pray for this person to not struggle with their faith anymore. Let him ask questions. Let him seek that, okay? Now, thankfully, God lets us off the hook, guys. He doesn't make us perfect. He knows we're going to have some questions. In fact, guys, if you have no questions, what do you need God for? Seriously. If you got all the answers, he's irrelevant. What do you need him for? I mean, the reality is we're going to have questions, and this is where we get to learn how to rely on him. Look what the Bible says here in Romans 10:9. If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And it doesn't say unless you have questions. Receiving Jesus is absolutely easy. Following him, not so easy. That's hard, especially in our culture. It's not easy. The idea of tithing and serving and proclaiming your faith in this culture isn't always easy. But accepting him is very easy. We could do that. And he doesn't have a whole lot of parameters here. It's just if you just say it with your heart and your mouth, I'm in, you're in. Let's do this. So if you don't have questions, guys, again, how are you supposed to grow closer to God? If you have all the answers, guys, trust me, you're gonna stop seeking him. I've had people literally, it drives me nuts and I know they have good intentions, but I'll be talking to somebody that doesn't know who Jesus is, and somebody else is there who is a Christian, and they'll go, well, I just believe 100% of the Bible, and I don't question anything, and God is God, and he's awesome, da-da-da, and I get all of that. But what that's saying is that I don't question anything, and I'm a Christian, so now you shouldn't either. And think about this. Even the most fundamental Christians, I don't question anything, really, so I guess you're better and more Christian-y than the guy who baptized God. Because that guy seemed to have some questions. So I guess you're better than John the Baptist. Matthew 23:12 says, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You shut the door to the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those who are trying to. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You travel over land and sea to win a single convert. And when you've succeeded, you make them twice as much a child of hell as you are. Yikes. That's pretty crazy. Here's what he's saying. You're trying to seem like you have all the answers, and you're not letting them go to God. You want them to go to you. And that's the wrong way to go. You're wanting to seem like you have all the answers. You want them to seem like you're the holiest of holy. And instead of going to God, they're going to go to you to get to God. You're doing it wrong. They should come to me, and they should come to me with anything that they have. And if they have any questions about it, they should come to me openly, not just rely on what some priest says. Okay? And when that happens, you have people following you, sure, but who are they really following? They should be following God. See, Christianity is not about having all the right answers, guys. It's about humbly living and loving like Jesus. That's what Christianity is about. And to take it a step further, a true Christian makes room for differing perspectives, models the way of Jesus, and mindfully wrestles with their faith. Guys, for many of us, we're so rigid about our faith with all these rules we have. We're rigid in ways that Jesus never was. Romans 14:1 says, accept the one whose faith is weak without quarreling over disputable matters. Understand that. So you don't have to fight over everything, okay? We have to give people an environment so they can ask questions and really disagree even, without attacking their character. Do you know how somebody's not sure about something? They get angry when you ask them. Yeah, you ever have this in your life? Maybe it's a boss or a friend or coworker or something, and you ask them a question and they actually get mad at you. That's how you could tell they're not sure of something. Example, let's say you go, hey, honey, did you pay the water bill? Because our water just shut off. The spouse can go, I don't know. I thought I did. Let's check. Let's check and see did that come out of our bank account? That's somebody that genuinely is, I don't know. I thought I did, but no. Or if somebody goes, yeah, I did. Well, you don't trust me? Fine, then you take over all the bills. Then you do it. I don't want to do this anymore. Well, there's something probably nefarious is going on with financially there. Because they're so defensive and they're so angry, they don't want to have to answer any questions. So obviously they're wrestling with something there. And that's how you know that they're not very sure about something. But if you're secure in your faith, yeah, ask me whatever you want. Sure, right? The big idea here is if you ask, that means somehow you don't really believe. And this is what false prophets do, guys. This is very dangerous. Matthew 7:13. And the idea is you can't question me because I'm the leader and that's that and that's it. It says this, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. Now, technically, guys, a false prophet is basically someone who does not agree or somebody who's trying to take God's word and manipulate it in some other way. And when you look at the big picture, there's really only about 5 things that all of Christianity agrees with. And there's a lot more, but these are the basic 5. Jesus is God in human form. Jesus died and rose again. We're saved by grace through Jesus. There's one God in 3 persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And the Bible is the inspired word of God. Don't change it or add to it. Pretty much those are our big things that we disagree with, now, or that we agree with. Now, you could say, well, there's a lot more to that. I get it. And some of us feel like the number one thing should be this. But what you may not understand is that might not be God's number one thing. So, but you act like it is. So it's like maybe your number one thing is you shouldn't be dancing. I don't know, just saying. Or drinking. That's bad, right? So that's going to be the number one thing. But that may not match what God's number one thing is. So you go around, you say, that's the number one thing. Guys, I've seen this. I've literally seen a guy tell another guy, you should not have a beer when this guy's super overweight and he's like got his 12th buffalo wing, right? The body's the temple. Don't get a tattoo while he's totally obese, right? It's like we're kind of picking and choosing what our number one is, and we want everybody else to live by our number one thing. And that's another thing you got to really be careful about, okay? Right now, guys, we have denominations fighting about this very thing, so it's topical. Right now, denominations are fighting and bickering over what's the number one thing, what's the most important thing, and they're going at each other and all this other stuff. And do you know what's happening while denominations are fighting with each other? Church attendance in America is going like down. Like, why would I want to be a part of this thing? You guys can't even agree on anything, right? Forget it. I don't really need to be a part of all this stuff. Listen, guys, I'm not here to bash any other church. But the point of this church is I'm not interested in any of that stuff, if I'm being honest with you. I'm just looking for people who don't know Jesus, and I'm hoping that they could find him here. And I want to create a family where we could be honest and open and ask questions, and you could talk to me, and I could talk to you, and let the denominations go at it and fight it out. But that's what we're doing here. That's what I want to do here, okay? Now, the fact of the matter is, if you don't agree with somebody, guys, they're not just, don't label them a heretic. Oh, they don't agree with me on this and that, the other. They must be a heretic, Guys, just trust me on this one. If that's you, you're in good company because they also labeled Jesus one as well. Now let's go back to where we started with Jesus and John. Matthew 11 says this. As John's disciples were leaving, Jesus began to speak to the crowd about John. What did you go into the wilderness to see? A reed swayed by the wind? If not, what did you go out to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No, those who wear fine clothes are kings in palaces. Then what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. Now here's what this means. He's saying, listen. By the way, he's saying it loud enough for John's prophets or disciples to hear and to send back to John. But he's saying, John didn't look like what you thought he was going to look like and sound what he didn't thought he was going to sound like. But he's the real deal. I might not look how you thought I should look or sound like that you want me to sound, but I am the real deal as well. Look at my words and look at my character. Matthew 11:18 says, for John came neither eating or drinking, and they say he's a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, but wisdom is proved right by her deeds. Okay? So nobody likes John the Baptist at first, but he's like, you really can learn a lot from him. And again, if you're labeled a heretic, you're in good company. That's what they're saying about Jesus. Okay? Partially because he didn't look the part. He found sinners and tax collectors and people that everybody else looked down upon. And what did he do with them? He ate dinner with them. He drank with them. He hung out with them. He went to parties with them. He listened to them. He allowed them to ask questions. He didn't get mad at them. He found out with their backstory and who they were. In other words, Jesus, the only one who literally knew it all, approached others with a humble relational posture of a learner and not a lecturer. And he wants to invite us to do the same. Now you could say, well, that's really elementary. I know all of that. I know Jesus did all that. I get all that. That makes total sense to me. Sure, he's Jesus. But here's the deal, guys. Would we recognize Jesus if he were here right now? You see, when we think of Christianity, and let's be honest, when we think of Christianity, we think of giant buildings, we think of elaborate leaders, worldwide leaders, leaders that actually talk to other world leaders, and we get excited about that. Wow, look at that person talk to the king or the president or the pope or whatever, and we get excited about that. And our version of success is this big thing with lots of people, everybody out there, and we're meeting on big world stages, and we've got worldwide organizations behind us. And that's what we think of when we think of success. But none of those things I just explained to you are characteristics of Jesus when he was here. He never met with world leaders. He didn't have a big elaborate thing. He approached you. He said, come talk to me. I want to talk to you. So what our idea of Christianity and success doesn't necessarily match what Jesus was. And so I say, if he was walking around, would we recognize him? Would we? Which I think is a really good question. What are we really impressed with? And who are we following? You know, guys, I've been in church for a long time, and I'm telling you right now, there are people that go to church and they are scared to death of the pastor or the leadership finding out about a habit they have, what they're going through. Why? Because we are conditioned to look at church in this perfect way. And the pastor and the staff and the leadership have to look a perfect way. And if I don't match this perfect way, I'm going to be kicked out. I could lose my livelihood. I could lose my title. I could lose my influence. I could lose my identity. And so I have got to look the part of this perfect thing because that's success. And that's what it looks like. So they're scared to death. They're scared to death of saying, you know, I know for no new couples going to church, they were fighting in the car, you get out of the car, and they have to look like everything's perfect because it has to match this thing that this church is promoting. And there are people that are scared to death of finding out what's going on in their home, what websites they looked at, what things that they drank. Now, listen, is there a time where you need to kind of step away from leadership just to get healthy? Of course there is, in anything that you do, job, anything. But in this case, a lot of people are like, if I don't match this perfect thing, I'm not as valuable to the church. It's going on right now, guys. There are people that you're seeing in churches all over this country that you think have it all together, and they do not, and they can't let you know that they don't because it doesn't match the package. Okay? Guys, if you're going through something tough, it's not about, man, what's HR going to say? What's my boss going to say? What's the pastor so-and-so going to say? No. When you're going through something tough, guys, you can go right to Jesus. And the way he receives you is different than the intimidating way you think a church is going to respond to you. You know, if you've never seen the show, Chosen. Thank you. It is really great. It is really, really great. It's probably the best depiction I've ever seen, the life of Jesus. It's just amazing. I love the take that they have on it. Has anybody seen it here? It's great. It's great. There's a scene, though, where Mary screws up, and she goes back into some bad habits. And if that's ever been you, you're going to relate to Mary very well. Because I'm sure that we've all had the thing where like, man, we feel so good. It was the day I got baptized, or it was when I led somebody to Jesus, and I feel awesome. And then we've had those moments where I don't want to look at him right now because I'm embarrassed, because I'm ashamed. And our churches, unfortunately, tend to promote that. Because if you go to, hey, come to us with anything. You did what? Okay, put them over here until they get better. Then we can bring them back out when they're good, right? So there's a scene that I really want you to see and understand, and it's from The Chosen. It's Mary coming back to Jesus after she messed up. Check this out.
It's not you. There's quite a lot going on right now. So it's good to have you back.
I don't know what to say.
I don't require much.
I'm so ashamed. You redeemed me and I just threw it all away.
Well, that's not much of a redemption if it can be lost in a day, is it?
I owe you everything. But I just don't think I can do it.
Do what?
Live up to it. Repay you. How could I leave? How could I go back to the place I was, and I didn't even come back on my own. They had to come get me. I just can't live up to it.
Well, that's true. But you don't have to. I just want your heart. A father just wants your heart. Give us that, which you already have. And the rest will come in time. Did you really think that you'd never struggle or sin again? I know how painful that moment was for you.
I shouldn't.
Someday. But not here.
I'm just so sorry.
Look up.
I can't.
You can. Look at me. I forgive you. It's over.
That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. He's not worried about you making him look bad. He's not worried about you ruining his image. He knows exactly who he is. He's God. And so you can go to him with whatever you have. And guys, I'm telling you right now, I'm telling you online too, if you're watching, if somebody forwards this message to you along during the week, and maybe you go to another church or whatever the case is, if your church has a place where only the elite can go and not everybody can go, and if it has a place where only certain members of the church, and they're the executive people of the church, and only they can go to, but nobody else can go to, and if you can't ask your pastor a question, run far and fast. Because those environments are not conducive of ones that are give and take, ask and receive. It's do what we tell you to do, and that's it, and that's that. You should be able to go to your pastor if you don't hear something you like or something went wrong. I've had that in this church. I've had people go, I didn't see what you meant by that. What did you mean by that? I don't understand. That's great. Not like, well, you can't question them. If you can't even get to your pastor, how are you supposed to ask that pastor a question? Guys, I'm telling you now, if that sounds judgmental, I don't care. Because that's the truth. We cannot have a congregations of people that are robots, that are just robotically doing whatever somebody says. You got to be able to ask questions. You got to be able to have doubts. You got to be able to have freedom to say, I'm not sure about all this stuff. Because within that, that's when you will grow closer to him. So guys, please, don't ever get into the thing where you can't question pastor. You can't question that. You can't go to that. It's the elite people that are only, don't fall for any of that stuff. When we do that, guys, we just try to be perfect and we end up being a bunch of terrific fakers that society looks at and says, those people are a bunch of phonies. What would happen if instead of repeating the shameful seasons of our violence-ridden, heresy-hunting church history, we chose to focus on aligning our everyday lives with the words and the way of Jesus? I wonder what would happen if we did that. That'd be pretty cool. See, it seemed like the early church actually thought that might be able to change the world. And it did. Just believing that he's got the answers that we don't, but we can seek him together. We could be grace-filled when we screw up, and we will screw up. That we're not worried about our image of how this is going to make us look or whatever that is. I don't care. I don't care how it makes us look because I know my heart. I'm doing the best I can. And I already know I'm not perfect, but I'm trying my hardest. And if people don't like it, tough. But let's not be so protective of the image of the church or the image of the pastor or the image of whatever, and just give people room to question and ask things that they're not sure about. And let's just be honest that we've all got stuff going on. And if you don't like something or if there's something rubbed you the wrong way, let's talk about it. Let's do that together. Again, the early church believed it could change the world, and I believe that they were right, that it has. Guys, we're not here to start a religious organization. We're just not. I'm not interested in that. I'm not here to start something like that at all. We are here to have a collection of people who trust Jesus, imperfect people, or we're going to leave room for other imperfect people to come here to seek questions as well. And if we don't know the answers, we're going to seek Jesus and ask him together. We're going to do that together. Let's pray. Father, I just thank you, God, for just the fact that we could ask these questions, God, that there has been so many of us, me included, how when we don't even want to pray to you because we're so embarrassed or ashamed or we feel guilty and we don't even want to go to you with our stuff. Help us to remember that image, Jesus, where you're just like, I'm not expecting you to be perfect. You will be, but not now. In heaven we'll be perfect, but not here. God, I just ask that if there's anybody that's watching this, maybe this message gets forwarded to somebody and they just are not sure what they believe, but they know that there's something there and they want to experience you. I pray that they reach out to us and let us know. We're not going to judge them. We're just going to talk with them. We're just going to ask them questions and listen to their answers. Father God, thank you for a church that we get to be open and free about this, that we could not be afraid of looking bad or whatever. We're not here to protect some sort of an image. We're here to love you and seek you and introduce others to you. Thank you, God, for taking this collection of misfit toys and making something beautiful out of us. Thank you for taking people from all sorts of backgrounds and ways of growing up and struggles and sins and using us to plant a church. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for all of that. Father, help us, church, to continue to be a church where anybody and everybody is welcome. And they're welcome to ask whatever they want. And if we don't know the answers, God, we will seek you first. It's in your name. Amen.